All right. Hey there. Welcome. I'm Dave.
I'm Kristen.
And today we're just going to hold our master class,
We're gonna
our
riff.
mastermind group. Yeah. Because that's kind of where we're at with everything that's going on. So hope you're well and everything's going well in your world. Kristen, what's been up with you?
So I actually have still not spent a ton of time on my knitting business. But there's been some really unexpected positive things from that. So I've been allowing myself space for my mental health to get back on track with that, which has been going awesome. And I'm really, really excited because I feel like I'm no longer this roller coaster where like things get really good and then things get really bad. I'm now just like steady along, and I can rest and I can be productive all within the same hour. It's like a whole new world's opening up to me. And I know like that sounds just total, like that sounds bizarre to people, especially people who don't probably deal with mental health, especially severely. Um, but I can actually like, I'll knit for 15 minutes and then I'll put it down and have a cup of tea and like play with like, that's just part of how it is right now, which is really exciting for me. So I'm very, very happy. And in my knitting for fun lately, I've been, um, seeing like new ways to like interpret things and understand and like honing some of my skills that I just haven't been doing lately. So it's been a huge benefit because as I'm sitting there knitting, I'm like visualizing how the skills that I'm using right now could be used in a future pattern of mine that I've gotten back in my head. So I'm starting to do like that planning work. And that's kind of what I actually love about knitting too, is like your brain can be doing one thing and processing or listening to audiobooks or whatever, or thinking about your future vacation or whatever. And so that's been really nice too. So I've made a lot of progress on some other like knitting projects that I've needed to get done. I've got some deadlines because of baby showers and things of that nature. Um, so yeah, and then I've been playing around with TikTok a little bit more too. I am on TikTok for knitting, but I'm exploring a little bit more of other content creators as well as posting. Halsey, come here. Lay down. The door is shut, so she's very unhappy about being stuck in here.
Just to be clear, that's your dog and not your kid.
Yes.
Yes.
Dog. Figure we could edit that part out if I was trying to leave enough space.
That's fine.
So I'm playing with TikTok. I'm posting still, and I'm actually just posting like bare minimum stuff of what I think is still going to be interesting to my like 24 followers or whatever. And I'm just trying to de-stash a lot of my yarn, and it's been a really interesting experience because I don't get that many views, and people already want my yarn. So it's like targeting the right people, and I don't even know how. Obviously, I'm obviously using hashtags and trying to make sure that whatever hashtags I'm using kind of lines up with the yarn that I'm showing. And obviously it's a huge win for people because I'm like, I will literally pay to send this to you because I just don't want this yarn anymore. And I want it to go to a good home. And I'm doing it kind of an experiment. Like, I don't kind of care how much money I'm sinking into this. The first round was expensive. So I will not be going to the place that I went to ship them out last time. I'll be going to USPS next time and seeing that kind of helps me with pricing. But, it's been fun to like rehome some yarn and like kind of be part of the community and meet some people on TikTok. I think there's a lot of like younger folks on TikTok who are like, I want yarn. And I remember and being a knitter or a crafter and not having the money. So I'm like, yeah, here, take it. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the engagement. I mean, obviously I'm not your target demo, but I do follow you on there just to, keep track of what's going on, and been interesting to see the success and the comments on there, just because it's a totally different world for mine. And yeah, I'm still totally in the test and see stage with TikTok. It has definitely changed my perspective on some of the other channels.
Yeah.
Which has been an interesting thing. Facebook is totally, for the fogies at this point.
I finally converted you.
Well, no, I mean, it's there, but it's, for what I do during the day, the international reach
Yeah.
is just, it's there on the platform, right? So when you're
Totally.
doing global things, you have to.
It has its uses.
It totally does. But calling that out though, it's interesting because the things that I typically sort of curate my experiences towards, like on Instagram, I am finding that many of those personalities or companies have not started on TikTok yet.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see early stage things, right? I mean, we're still at the early stage where, junior high school kids are doing most of it. And then, just wait until grandma shows up and starts doing TikToks. Then, by that point it'll be over.
And they're adorable. I think like large companies, how I'm seeing them activate most frequently on TikTok is influencers, which makes sense. They're scared to commit the time and the money to it if they're not exactly sure what they're going to see. So why not pay somebody to kind of make the content and handle that first? It has that level of removal, but it's interesting to look at in terms of like a small business, because you still can use influencers on any platform, even if you're not on it, for your small business. And you don't have to go with the influencer who has 2 million followers. You can go with an influencer who has 2,000 followers. And if they line up to your brand and your business and your goals, your mission.
Well, like I was reminded of that recently with something I was working on, where we actually sat down, we talked target audience. What's the audience size? Where are they at? How are you developing them? And I think that's just an easy thing to get lost on a lot of people, because it's, I have to do TikTok. I have to do,
right.
You feel like you have to be on the platform and you jump in without thinking strategically about, are they even there?
Yeah.
Right? Like, especially with the guitar stuff. Yeah, there's some guitar lesson things, but it's a lot of young kids showing off, or, people showing you how to play particular things. Even though, that copyright algorithm hasn't totally been put together. But I think that's the interesting thing with TikTok, with the music background that that started up with, that has a unique bend to it. So I don't know. It's still fun to play around, just experiment, and not to know what should be working, right?
I think because I follow you, my For You page has been occasionally getting like musicians, and I ended up. There's these two musicians. I don't remember their names. They don't know. As far as I know, they don't know each other. But I've been on both of their lives. Like they've been doing lives, and they just like play live, and it's just like, it's so cool. It's this experience where you get to really feel the music. One guy is like he's a jazz musician, and I like jazz, but I'm not like, I don't listen to jazz radio, where I don't go out of my way and like find jazz songs on like any of my apps or whatever. Right. But he's so talented that I was just like, I was mesmerized. I was like, okay, I'm going to follow him because I want to see more of his stuff. I want to, like, if I'm knitting, maybe I'll just turn on one of his lives or something and just sit there and listen to his music. And then this other young woman, had this beautiful voice, and she would sing and play guitar, and like she'd do covers of things, and she had like one of her own original songs, and I was on her live too. And like I learned so much about TikTok and what lives are like, and what people can and will do. And like it was just, it's fascinating because it is almost like for some reason it feels way more in person than any other virtual event that I've been a part of. And I don't know if it was like the video quality, the sound quality, the fact that it's on your phone and it's full screen. I don't know. I'm sure that all contributed to it, but it was way more personal and way more interesting than sitting on like a Zoom call.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the expectation of the Zoom call, right? Or the
Yeah.
Google Meet or whatever it is. Um, yeah, you expect to be disappointed with a web conference.
Yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
expect to be like part of the audience where you don't feel like it's personal, right? It's not a one-on-one. It's a one-to-many conversation. And on TikTok, it feels one-to-one. Even though you know other people are there and you're seeing like their comments and like sending roses and whatever else, and you're like, I know I'm not the only one here, but like, yet I feel connected to this person.
Hmm. Yeah, that's been one of the more off-putting things for me, though.
Interesting. Why?
Well, so I was going to say, I think the intimacy comes in because it is the person just playing in their own space,
Yeah.
performing, and so it feels more intimate because it is just sparse, right? But when you like look at the backgrounds and you realize this is their living room, this is their bedroom, this is whatever, that part of it to me has been slightly off-putting, where it's like, I'm not invited into the house yet here I am.
But you are
And
invited into the house by proxy of them like
well,
going
yes,
live.
by proxy, and so this is me fully recognizing that there's some traditional thinking that's running through my head.
That's fine.
But also I like the showmanship of live music as well. The performance of it, right? It's not just sitting around singing around a campfire. That's great, but that's not the level that I really like. I like it when there's when you have the pyro, when you have the lights, when you have loud amps to the face, the production of it, right? There's something to be said for that too, and that's just my preference is the bigger shows.
No, that's totally fair. I think there's definitely a lot to be said for that showmanship and the entertainment aspect of it. It's funny, as I've gotten older, I feel like I've steered away from that. And maybe it's pandemic. Maybe it's just the fact that I'm like, every time I go, I'm like 5'2", and like people just the 6'5" guy walks in front of me, and I'm
Right.
like,
you need like front row, first balcony.
Yeah, but then you get shoved into like whatever. Even when it's like, I don't know. I do like live music a lot though. So I think that's probably part of it for me is like it's that, and like during the pandemic, there wasn't as much community. And there wasn't like nobody in my household like really plays music like we used to, but not anymore. We like obviously we'll play music on an app. We don't like play an instrument or
one of the saving graces for me, because live music is such a thing for me. It's really cathartic and I love it. Has been actually, there are some fantastically shot full live concerts on YouTube. So I discovered some of my favorite bands. A lot of the big European festivals, like there's Hellfest in France, Resurrection Fest in Spain, Download in the UK. They've all been shooting 4K TV quality video from like 2015 on. And so you can find performances from a lot of really cool bands from, then until now, doing a live set and, getting that experience without, having to be there or whatever. Nice. So that's been one of my sort of secret things throughout the last 2 years is doing that. And I will say, so one of my favorite bands is Machine Head. They're out of San Francisco. When everything got locked down, they started what they're calling Electric Happy Hour. Okay. And it's actually kind of a cool use case, for, doing something digital or being slightly innovative. They have a studio that they do all their rehearsals in, that they do their recording in. And they just went out and they bought a bunch of, lighting and recording equipment, video cameras and all that stuff. And they started live streaming happy hour performances where they put on a 2-hour show every Friday. And they've done it for the last like 2.5 years, where they do a different set every Friday.
That's intense.
And well, I mean, they're playing a lot of their own stuff, but then they
Yeah.
learn new covers, you know.
Okay.
And there were some weeks where they stopped because they were working on a new record. But those have been cool. So if you want, go to YouTube and look up Electric Happy Hour, Machine Head. But they've been live streaming to Facebook. They've been live streaming to Twitch. They've been live streaming to YouTube. And they call out, like they'll stop in between and they'll check out all the comments and do the emoji walls and whatever else on the different platforms. And it's been kind of fun because, to your point, that experience of being kind of intimate is like, you're right next to the lead singer. So it's like your front row. But then you're seeing, banter back and forth where it's the singer and the bass player. And then behind a wall of amps is the drummer. So every once in a while you see him doing this, like, but yeah, and then you have that live music feel where you have the lead singer going, all right, beers up, beers up, beers up, and it's just, a lot of energy, which has been fun. So seeing that kind of thing, getting the live music that way, I think is a really interesting way of, not only developing the audience, but then gaining the audience that you already do have, and finding new ways of creating some revenue, right? Because a lot of these bands now, even the ones that got the record deals before Napster and all the streaming stuff happened, and now you can't make a living. The middle class of those artists are now having to be innovative and having to come up with new ways of doing things. So I hope some of this stuff will stay. Yeah,
I think it will. I think this is a whole new, now that people have experimented with it and it can be a revenue stream, I think that adds a whole new element to all of this. And I think given the society we live in, that's a huge indicator for us. We need to understand those revenue streams. I will say, like, we're kind of talking around like audience and we're kind of talking around revenue streams. I think what's interesting to take into consideration for smaller businesses, a lot of times, like, trying a new social media platform or trying a new way of connecting with your audience doesn't mean that it has to be something you stick with either. I think there's nothing wrong with trial and error. So like Twitch, I know that there is some sort of audience on there for knitting. I just don't think it's that large. And I don't think it's the like crosshairs of the audience that I'm looking for. So like, I'm not going to spend time on that. But if it's ever a place where I get to where I'm interested in it, like I would totally experiment on that. And the kind of cross section of audience and revenue streams. And I think this is something we kind of touched on before too, of like I brainstorm like 26 different revenue streams. I wanted to be very intentional about what revenue streams I was going to have, because that's the time and effort I'm putting into my business.
Right.
If I diversify too much, if I constantly try to update my content on Twitch and TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and then between, you can reuse content, but having to reformat it or having to tweak it a little bit because your audience is slightly different on one platform versus the other, it's a waste of time. You can't be everything to everyone on every platform, especially with a small business.
Well, we've talked about that too, where strategy is not knowing what to say yes to. It's what you say no to. That is what strategy is, right?
Yeah.
And I think the content expectations are totally different depending on the channel that you go to, right? Like when you say knitting on Twitch,
I know, right? You're thinking like, no way.
Well, I'm just like immediately bored because I'm like, what would that be? Would it just like watching people knit?
Probably.
Like, is that a thing? Like,
yes, that's.
But again, that's not my. Right. I'm not part of that audience, so there's no way that. Meanwhile, I could sit and watch people debate whether or not the tubes that go into, well, not that amp, this amp, the tubes that go into this amp, if I rebias the circuitry into a different tube, how will that change the sound?
Yeah.
Right. And oh, by the way, that factory in China no longer makes those, so you actually have to source them from right?
Yeah.
I totally like that. But you know, it's like me and 1,500 other people.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, actually, so that's a question for you, because there is the one of the things in the pandemic stats, keeping up with what was going on with like YouTube and those things. There was that whole with me movement that was suddenly doing really well on YouTube. Was that kind of a big thing within the knitting community, where people, study with me or knit with me or whatever?
It's been showing up on multiple platforms. YouTube tends to be more of the, I'm going to specifically look up one technique that I've only done 3 times and I've forgotten because it's been 2 years. So I need to remind myself how to do this. Or this pattern has a very specific way of doing a cast on. I need to know exactly what I'm doing so I don't screw this up. But it does show up on like Instagram. It does show up on TikTok. I don't think it's funny because I couldn't knit while I was pregnant, which was in the pandemic, because I had really severe carpal tunnel. I loved to watch people knit because it was like I was getting the view of just their hands and just doing it. And it would it reminded me of exactly what I was missing. And I would sit there and I just listen to whatever music they had on there and I'd watch them knit. I don't think it's as prevalent because I think knitters are able to just knit and see their own knit, and they're able to control their own environment. Are they listening to an audiobook? Are they watching TV? Are they listening to music? Do they have tea? It's a full more when you can control all those elements, you're not going to sit and watch somebody else. But it is really interesting to dabble in a little bit, because I think there is not a huge market for it as a way to do content, but it is I would say not a high value content piece, but medium. It's way better than someone just following a trend and being but I'm making it yarn. And to me, I'm cool. Swipe. So have you found the play with me? Any guitar stuff that nobody was really into it?
There's some interesting jams on TikTok where somebody will, lay down something and then say, hey, solo on top of this, or something like that. Duets. Or, you do the duets with, 2 people start singing and they do harmonies and whatever. That kind of stuff is cool to see. But again, there's the different types of players, right? For me, I'm kind of a gearhead and I'm a technique geek. And so
you're just sitting there critiquing people. Is that what you're saying? You don't have the right equipment and your hands are wrong.
Well, no, I mean, they're doing their own thing, right? I mean, that's the thing with guitars. Finding your tone, I think we covered this in a different one. Finding your tone is really important in the guitar community, because that is how you express yourself. That's how you show yourself to the world. So finding the right amp, finding the right guitar, finding the right pedals and stuff to get the sounds that you want to convey what you're thinking and feeling is an important part of the journey. Because it's not just, okay, I know how to play these chords now. It's, I know how to play these chords in the way that I want to express them. Right. That's the next level kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people that get lost in the rabbit hole of it though, where, there's no better sound than a 1965 Fender, blah, 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 because that was the pre-CBS buyout. And when CBS bought them, then, they just went to shit. It's like, well, okay, fine, fine. I mean, I would agree with them, but it doesn't ultimately matter, right? Because if you like it and you think it sounds good, great. There's two guys that I love to watch on YouTube, and they have a show called That Pedal Show. And it's these two British guys who are so nerdy about guitar pedals and tone and whatever else. But they are the exact opposite spectrum of what I like to do. They are like vintage everything, right? Like they want the 65 Strat, they want the old, 1980s Marshall Plexi amps. Anything that's old to get that kind of classic rock sound, they're all about it. Whereas for me, I don't like that sound. That's not how I express myself. But by watching them, it's just fun to see two friends give each other a hard time, while playing guitars. And I've learned a lot actually about, pedal order and, I prefer this sound rather than that. And through watching them, I've been able to basically cut out a whole section of, the guitar gear market, because I know that, that's great for other players, but that has nothing to do with the way I want to sound, the way I want to express myself.
As you're talking about this, I'm like trying to line this up with knitting, and there are like a few things for sure that line up. And it's like, there are different types of knitting. There's like lace knitting and Fair Isle and sweater knitting and hat knitting, like objects and techniques. The hardware piece is different though. Like, I mean, you find what you're interested in and then you kind of stick to it, but you don't really, it's usually the material of the needle. And that's
I was just going to ask that. It's got to be like drumsticks where, different wood has a different sound, different, whatever.
Yeah. I'm obsessed with bamboo needles because they're more sustainable than wood or metal. But also they like grip your stitches a little bit better. And so you just don't have them slide off, which a drop stitch is very much a thing. And if you're curious what that looks like, go on my TikTok, because I dropped multiple stitches and then show you how to fix it. So yeah, it's interesting because I think in your world, there's so much more gear.
Perfect example. You have the ever classic.
Oh yeah.
Dunlop Tortex 0.88 millimeter pick, pretty standard, whatever.
Okay.
Then you have this other Dunlop one that is much smaller, yet much thicker, and has a sharper point. Does size matter? Yes. Does thickness matter? Yes. And what you use here will affect the tone through the whole signal chain. And like different picks are better for.
Wouldn't that just be notes?
No, so signal chain is from your guitar,
the
guitar cable into the amp, and then out the speakers.
Like a literal signal.
Right. And then anything you put in between, like guitar pedals or, whatever else.
Sure.
Because what you have here hits the string, and so that quality of hitting the string affects
that makes sense.
The whole rest of it. I've been experimenting with different picks for, like, this black one I cannot use on my acoustics unless I'm doing like single note runs. If I'm sitting and strumming, I have better picks for that.
We should have named our podcast Strings and Things, because we both have strings. I was like, strings. I literally have strings. I have strings.
Actually, that white coffee cup is nothing but guitar picks.
That makes sense.
I can just reach up and grab, and
that is a budget binder folder, and that below is also some sort of like little trapper keeper, both full of needles, different sizes, long, short, different thicknesses, all made out of bamboo though, because that's who I am.
All right, get the crunchy. So Okay, so for a business podcast, if anybody is still with us, congratulations.
You learned a little bit about knitting and guitars.
Well, so here the thing about this though, just to kind of continue on the riff, I think a lot of that thinking has influenced the way that I approach marketing or branding.
Ooh, interesting. Tell me more.
So, well, especially with the whole find your tone piece, where you know you know a metalhead when you see a metalhead, right? Because you kind of look at the stereotype and you go, well, yeah, or the punk rocker or the indie guy, right? Each genre has its own particular look. So right off the bat, there's that. Not saying it's right or wrong. That's just the way the industry is, right? And then like the gear that you use, right? So I tend to use traditional body shapes for my guitars, but a lot of people like, the really crazy pointy things, or there are different non-traditional body shapes. And all of that creates the image that's on stage. And if that image on stage does not match with the music that's coming off of the stage, right, there is a mismatch with the audience, right? And again, right or wrong, that's just kind of the way it is.
I see the connections you're making here. Keep going.
Well, so it's with any of the logos that you create, again, It has to be within the lane.
Your branding.
Yeah, exactly. All of it.
Everything you're describing is branding of a band. Sub elements to branding of a band versus branding a business.
Right. I think, brand, you could just put the brackets around the R, and that's really exactly what it is, right? Where the R is optional.
See, we're just coming up with all sorts of names today.
Yeah. So I think that has influenced that. And then paying attention to those details, right? Because when you are writing a song, you kind of know, God damn it. Why is that not blocking him? Okay. So when you see a particular song or a particular band live, you know what to expect, and you kind of know what audience is going to be going to that particular artist. And that's just a really good, easy visualization where you've all been to, a baseball game or a concert, and you've experienced this, right? There's the certain dress code when you go see, a baseball game, right? There's a certain dress code when you go see a basketball game. Some people adhere to it, some people don't, but it's just, en masse, that's the way it is. And you need to speak to that audience in order to actually attract them. Right?
Yeah. And when you're talking about this too, I'm also thinking of community, because not only are there like visual cues, we're talking about visual cues in particular, to an audience, to a band, but also like as part of the audience, you can identify other people within your own community, right? Like It's interesting to kind of think about this too in the virtual world of like on social media or other community spaces, where I would say a lot of people are using social media as their community spaces, just easy access and barrier to entry and things of that nature. I guess those two things are the same thing.
Strategically perilous, but yes.
Yeah. So the virtual aspect to that, like, what are the signals? What are the signals of small business or personal branding that people put out there that make it, hey, I'm a part of this community, or hey, I'm actually trying to be someone in this community. And I've actually thought about this a lot, in particular for Instagram, because I didn't want to show up with the Instagram polished profile. Right. There are a couple leaders in the knitting industry, and they have beautiful profiles that are very, very intentional. And while I do think that they're beautiful profiles, I also feel like there's a level of authenticity there that just doesn't exist.
Mm.
And it's not who I am. It's not how I want to show up in the world. And so I've consciously made an effort to, when I take a photo of one of my pieces or whatever, it doesn't have to be perfect, even though it bugs me that it's not. Or like, it's not all the same color scheme for 50 photos. So you end up with this really curated, album or whatever. It's like, hey, this is what I'm working on. So this is the color that I chose. Or, hey, the lighting's not perfect or whatever. So.
Well, yeah. And then, you have people like me where you mistrust that perfection.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, it truly is who you want to attract. And especially, I mean, the horror stories that we've heard about, people who have not thought of this intentionally and then have built an audience who they realize they don't want to be a part of the audience that they've built. And then what do you do? Because you have this, this entity that you don't want anything to do with, but it's the only thing that's paying your bills. So
that's almost worse than having a really horrible boss.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, it's not just on Insta, it's not just on building the audience, but the search engines and with machine learning and the AI and all of that other stuff that's happening right now, those are getting better at finding the language that certain communities are using, finding the different signals and the content that those communities are interested in, so that if you are not matching those things, if you are not showing that you are of the communities, then you just won't rank well for those things, right? It's not just about pounding keywords anymore. It is the totality of what you're creating and how you've set it up.
Totally.
So, yeah, I mean, having the brand itself and then having all the communications that you have go out, showing that, you're of the thing that you are speaking about is really important.
I feel like we could spend a whole hour on communication, written, verbal, whatever, for your brand. If it is not intentional, then it can very much, it's instrumental. I think, in the way that you see people show up and they are either inauthentic or they misspeak or they're suddenly canceled or whatever. You see it all the time of people like not really processing what they're saying, what they're putting out there. And it's kind of funny to say this because we're just kind of riffing on stuff and we haven't really but when you put out copy, when you put out statements and when you put yourself out there, there's very much potential to have backlash or have people not agree with you or say something wrong. And it's scary, but and I need to take my own advice on this a lot of the time. It is part of it. You don't get anywhere by staying silent. You don't get anywhere by, I'm literally saying this to myself right now.
My son with board games, he hates losing. Granted, he's 4.5, hates losing, but I'm like, if you're willing to play, you're willing to lose.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. It's a hard lesson to learn. And
we're human. We're all going to lose occasionally, whether it's a board game or saying something stupid. That's literally what it means to be human.
Yeah.
There's nothing, I think it's really about how you recover than anything else. Side note, I was totally that kid though. We played spoons. Do you know what that is? It's a card game.
I think I may have played it once or twice, but I have no recollection of it.
It's here nor there. We played spoons a lot when I was a little kid. And whenever I would lose, which was often because there were 5 of us in our family, and I was the littlest, I would throw the biggest fits. And it took me a while to figure out how not to be a sore loser.
See, I got around that problem. We played Uno a lot when I was a kid. And my way of getting around that was before they entered into a game with me, I would say, hey, just so you know, I tend to cheat. And That's one of my aunt's favorite things. Like she brings it up all the time about how, this little 6-year-old's like, well, yep, I cheat. Do you still want to play? Cool. Like,
at least you're honest about it. You're like, hey, that's what you're getting into. That says something. My brother would not tell us that he cheated. We play euchre a lot too, and he completely stacked the deck multiple times. Cheating. Cool. But yeah.
All right. Well, I think this has been a fun one, at least for me. I hope it comes across to the rest of the audience. Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you thought. If this conversation sparked any ideas in your head, by all means, share it. If you have any ideas that you want us to riff on, by all means, let us know. And we will look forward to discussing those on a future date. So see you in the next episode.
Bye.